Hello and good afternoon, dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al24 World News Program, streaming live from the capital Algiers. And coming up next in our news program, a top military official with the breakaway Donetsk People's Republic said Ukrainian fighters in the city should now surrender or die. The House Select Committee investigating the January 6 Capitol riots with former President Donald Trump's false election fraud claims front and center in its second public hearing. Judges in London have thrown out last-ditch bids by human rights groups and campaigners to stop Britain sending its first flight of asylum seekers to Rwanda on Tuesday. Brazilian police have denied the reports that bodies were discovered in the Amazon belonging to a journalist and an indigenous expert. Hello again and welcome. Those were today's top stories. A top military official with Russian-backed separatist focus in Ukraine's east claimed Monday the city of Severodonetsk is now isolated and Ukrainian soldiers have no choice but to surrender. Eduard Bossarian also claimed the Ukrainian army had intensified attacks on the center of Donetsk city, which is under the DPR control after Western countries started supplying them with heavy weapons.
Severodonetsk is actually blocked after they blew up the last bridge that connected it with Lysychansk yesterday. Therefore, the Ukrainian military units that are stationed there remain in Severodonetsk forever. They have two options: either follow the example of their colleagues and surrender, or die. They have no other option.
In the same of thoughts, days passed and Russian military operation expand through the Ukrainian territory every day. Russian forces have gained more ground on the eastern Ukraine region of the Donbass as the battle has reached the highest degree of tension as military confrontation continue with Russia widening its artillery attacks and missile launching tactics while many Ukrainian troops pull back from the region. Osama Yadi has more to tell.
Day after day, Russia is pounding the Donbas region of Ukraine with relentless artillery and air raids, making slow but steady progress to seize the industrial heartland of its neighbor. With the conflict now in its fourth month, it's high-stakes campaign that could dictate the course of the entire war.
Today, from 50 up to 100 people may die in the most difficult direction, in the east of our state. They are defending our state and our independence, which everyone in the world is talking about. Everyone says so, but we personally feel it very much.
Ukrainian military planes were seen flying low and smoke billowed in the background as the sounds of artillery rang out in Bakhmut. Luhansk region governor Serhiy Haidai said in a telegram post on Wednesday that some Ukrainian troops were fighting with the Russians while others had pulled back. Ukrainian emergency personnel continue to evacuate people from towns and villages in the eastern Donbass region, but many are reluctant to leave despite the escalating fighting. The team traveled in a large armored personnel carrier nicknamed the Capsule as they made their way past trenches and heavily armed Ukrainian positions, but not all the people the emergency services came to evacuate agreed to leave.
You know, I'm sick and I don't want to impose myself on other people and go from place to place. I don't want that. I'm scared. It's really scary.
Getting a full picture of the battle in the east has been difficult because airstrikes and artillery barrages have made it extremely dangerous for reporters to move around. Both Ukraine and Moscow-backed rebels fighting in the east also have introduced tight restrictions on reporting from the combat zone.
According to investigation revealed on Monday by Amnesty International, Russia's indiscriminate use of prohibited weapons such as cluster bombs has killed hundreds of civilians in the Ukraine city of Kharkiv. In its report, the organization accuses Russian troops of indiscriminately bombing residential neighborhoods of Kharkiv with rockets that by their nature have a little precision to reach certain targets. Amnesty investigators found evidence of the repeated use of 9 and 209 and 9 and 235 cluster munitions, all of which are prohibited by international treaties.
We found that Russian forces, in their relentless shelling of Kharkiv, have carried out indiscriminate strikes that have killed hundreds of people and injured thousands. Many of these strikes were launched using cluster munitions, which are widely banned, as well as other indiscriminate weapons such as artillery shells and rockets and scatterable landmines, which are indiscriminate when used in urban areas. And such indiscriminate attacks, when they result in civilian death and injuries, as well as the destruction of civilian objects, are war crimes.
The Alpha Committee in Washington launched its second day of hearing on January 6 riots at the Capitol Hill, investigating on what it calls the big lie of former U.S. President Donald Trump after he was defeated in the election. Islam Seed has more to tell over this story.
You can press a button for Trump and the vote goes to Biden. What kind of a system is this?
An inert video of Trump's supporters testified in Washington, D.C., including his top advisors, his family members and government officials, provided disturbing timeline on what they called Trump's big lie, showing how the former U.S. president tried to stay in power after his presidential defeat.
The 2020 election was not close. In 2000, that was 537 and close. In this election, the most narrow margin was 10,000 and something in Arizona, and you just don't make up those sorts of numbers in recounts.
Pay attention to what Donald Trump and his legal team said repeatedly about Dominion voting machines. Far-flung conspiracies with a deceased Venezuelan communist allegedly pulling the strings.
During the testimony, several of Trump's advisors who volunteered to testify said that they told him repeatedly not to declare that there was an election fraud and that those claims were false. But he didn't listen, and he was becoming detached from reality.
I was somewhat demoralized because I thought, boy, if he really believes this stuff, he has, lost contact with he's become detached from reality if he really believes this stuff.
He said there's lots of fraud going on here. Told him flat out that much of the information he's getting is false and or just not supported by the evidence.
Additional evidence is to be released in the hearings this week, focusing on Trump's decision to ignore the outcome of the election and the court cases that ruled against him. Furthermore, the panel detailed how Trump and his allies raised hundreds of millions of Trump's false claims after the election, and how some of the money went to entities that directly benefited Trump's family and friends. His false claims of election fraud on January 6th led to massive chaos and provoked his supporters to break through the Capitol Hill, the attack which left 9 people dead and more than 800 arrested.
Britain's Court of Appeal dismissed on one day an appeal against the High Court decision that asylum seekers can be flown to Rwanda in a controversial immigration or rather migration plan. The decision means the first deportation flight to Kigali can go ahead today, Tuesday. Nabil Khazini has more to tell.
The last bid by human rights groups and campaigners to stop Britain from sending asylum seekers to Rwanda has fallen apart. The first flight to Kigali can go ahead. This was the decision of the Court of Appeal in London, which confirmed an earlier decision to deny an injunction to block the controversial migration plan.
This court cannot therefore interfere with that conclusion, and the final heading is conclusion. For the reasons we have given, this appeal is dismissed.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
And outside, even though they failed to ban the measure, there were hundreds in the streets of England's capital to protest against the migration project.
It's important. We are one world, one people, and we need to look after all the peoples of the world, yes, with the resources that we have to be able to do that. And this country has the resources to take care of people.
Under the plan, the British government will send anyone who enters the UK illegally to Rwanda, a project sharply criticised by the UN and human rights associations.
The UK says, you know, we do this to save people from dangerous journeys. Let me doubt that a little bit. I mean, saving people from dangerous journeys is great, is absolutely great. But is that the right way to do it? Is that the real motivation for this deal to happen? I don't think so.
Senior Church of England bishops have used their pens to send a strong letter that denounced the policy as one that shames Britain. The shame is our own, because our Christian heritage should inspire us to treat asylum seekers with compassion, fairness and justice, as we have for centuries, says the letter. Since the start of the year, more than 10,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally to reach British shores in small boats, a considerable increase compared to previous years.
Zionist blockade over Gaza has reached its 50th year, and Zionist forces are working on reinforcing it. Gaza Strip has been suffering in silence as 800,000 Palestinian children in this tiny strip of land have never known anything but blockade. People live miserable conditions with shortages in everything. The United Nations Security Council has recently condemned the situation imposed on the people amidst international silence over the excessive violence practiced in the region every day. To a different matter now, Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Mr. Ramtan Lamamra, received Monday in Algiers Deputy Foreign Minister of Germany, Katia Kuhl, who is on a working visit to Algeria. According to a statement by the ministry, this visit falls within the framework of consolidating the bonds of friendship and partnership between the two countries, which are celebrating this year the 60th anniversary of the establishment of their diplomatic relations. The same source stated that the meeting provided an opportunity to review the state of Algerian-German relations in various fields of cooperation and the anticipation of the upcoming bilateral dates. The current issues at the regional and international levels were also discussed, as well as ways to strengthen the partnership between Algeria and the European Union.
Algeria and Germany have had a very strong partnership for a long time. Our bilateral relation dates back 60 years this year. And we are going to strengthen our cooperation in several fields: politics, foreign affairs, security and also energy, and of course, hydrogen. But at the base of all that, it is cultural cooperation that is important, so that we can improve the exchanges of young people to learn languages, to work together for a better future.
Former Foreign Affairs Minister of Spain, José Manuel García, criticized on Monday the actions of the current government after its sudden change of position on the Sahrawi and the suspension by Algeria of bilateral treaty of friendship and cooperation. The former minister underlined that it is an error to complain to the European Union. And to have a clear idea of Spain's relationship with Algeria, I am joined live via Skype by Mr. Abdel Nour Choumi, a journalist and a specialist in the Maghreb matters. Mr. Abdel Nour, hello over there. And as a direct question, how can you explain the accusation of Moscow by the Spanish government to be at the origin of Algeria's decision to cut off business relations, while Sanchez is the only one against Algeria and his foreign policy harmed Spain?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Actually, it's, a nonsense statement, and we all know today Prime Minister Sanchez is alone, even on his party, and he's facing serious critics and challenges in light of his odd decision and shifting Spain or Madrid policy toward the thorny issue of the Western Sahara. So, however, it is still just a statement that Sanchez is looking for an alibi to, I would say, justify his senseless decision that is hurting a great deal his country following the ongoing turmoil, regional and international turmoil that is impacting directly Europe, not only on energy, but also its national security and also its integral process. And we all know today how Europe, and notably the European Union, is totally, in dire position and in disarray. And even
Perfectly understood. I'm sorry to cut your train of thought, Mr. Abdel Toumi, but based on the idea that how Europe sees things now, Algeria showed resolve in respecting international law regarding the cause of Western Sahara, and Germany backs Algeria and refuses to meet Madrid's requests. So, at this point, do you think that European countries now have nothing more important than the importance of economic cooperation with Algeria?
It is indeed. Actually, it's just a rhetorical statement what they are making in Brussels and Strasbourg. The main thing we know now, it's on a bilateral issue, even though they're trying to put it as an integral process, but that is not the case. And also, because of the EU and coherent foreign policy, this is why Algeria today is in very, very good shape, in an excellent position to tackle all these issues bilaterally, and also in giving to Algiers this new paradigm that has established lately to the assertion is diversification partnership. And we saw that in the following rapprochement or strategic rapprochement between Algiers and Rome, and also today and yesterday and today visit of Vice Foreign Affairs Minister, German Foreign Affairs Minister to Algiers. And which is very interesting on this visit is not only stressing the robust relations between the two countries, Algeria and Germany, but she touched on a very important issue, which we call it the cultural diplomacy, which is very, very important these days to enhance these relations. Not siding the other vital issues such as energy and national security issues, because they all go together. And this is, is putting Algiers in a very, good position to negotiate, the entire EU policy or wherever they have been putting Algiers for the last two decades in front of the status quo. But today, the dynamic is changing, and also so that Algiers foreign policy new paradigm that is shaping the entire Algiers foreign policy toward Europe. And this is why today we saw the robust relation with Germany, the strengthened relations with Italy, and so that today even France is trying to position itself in light of all these latest developments. Therefore, Spain is totally now marginalized and isolated itself by the Prime Minister senseless decision on the neutrality issue on the Western Sahara question.
Quite understood. Thank you ever so much for this explanation, Mr. Abdel Toumi. Now moving on to another matter, President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune installed on Monday the 53rd edition of Algiers International Fair. The event brought together over 700 companies, 530 of them Algerian and 187 foreign. Zahra Farjani has more to tell.
Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune, while inaugurating the 53rd edition of the Algiers International Fair, linked the move to Algeria's efforts to facilitate the process of communication between businessmen in Algeria and the United States. The Algerian head of state called on economic operators from the two countries to intensify cooperation and exchange experiences, and to benefit from the American experience in the field of emerging enterprises, announcing the organization of a special forum for emerging enterprises in Algeria soon. President Tebboune also urged the American side to intensify cooperation in the agricultural field, coinciding with his country's launch of a huge sectoral program. Algeria's goal is to launch a multipolar strategic partnership between the two countries.
أمريكا تعتبر متعامل اقتصادي كبير.
America is a major economic dealer, and we have great commercial and economic relations, and we aspire from both sides to develop these relations until they reach strategic relations in many areas.
Ambassador Elizabeth Moore-Obeen expressed the United States' desire to double the volume of American investments in Algeria to $12 billion.
We thought it was really important to have these talks this week since it's all about commercial exchange, businesses, Algerian businesses exporting to the United States, American businesses investing in Algeria. We are Algeria's largest foreign direct investor. According to the International Monetary Fund in 2020, $6.1 billion were invested here in Algeria. As ambassador, I would love to see that number doubled even. And so we're here to talk about how to streamline the regulatory framework, how to make it easier for businesses to work together, Algerian and American businesses to work together.
In addition to strengthening trade relations in many sectors, concluded by the American government meeting for trade and investment in its 7th edition, strengthening partnership between the two countries would contribute to achieving the investment and economic mobility that Algeria is witnessing in light of the country's introduction of a new investment law.
Uncertainty related to the length of transition period in Mali made it difficult to achieve progress in implementing the 2015 agreement. Al-Gassim Wayne, special representative of the Secretary General of Mali, spoke about the situation. Let's have a listen.
On the subsequent measures taken by the Malian authorities, including the decree extending the transition for 2 additional years to conclude in March 2024. I spoke about the peace agreement to express concern at the very slow implementation process. We have been making efforts with Algeria, the chef de file of the mediation, to relaunch the implementation process, convening a number of meetings of the international partners. And it is my hope that the Malian parties will soon agree on the modalities for the convening of the high-level decision-making meeting.
Shares sank in Asia on Monday after a report that U.S. inflation worsened that last month sent stocks reeling on Wall Street. Major regional markets dropped more than 2% in early trading Monday, while U.S. futures slipped more than 1% on Friday. The S&P 500 sank 2.9%, locking it in its 9th losing week in the last 10. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index led losses regionally as it fell 3.81%. The Indian rupee jumped to a record blow against the dollar on Monday. Japan's benchmark Nikkei Index ended the day down by just over 3%. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng closed 3.4% lower, while the Kospi in South Korea finished down 3.3%. In a major trial criticized by the U.S. and right groups and as politically motivated, a Cambodian court sentenced roughly 60 opposition activists to prison on Tuesday, including famed lawyer Thurvi Sang, for planning to commit treason.
It follows the logic of this autocratic regime to find me guilty. But I am freedom today. I am Lady Liberty. So it won't just be me, Thierry Singh, who will be found guilty, but all the Cambodians who love justice, who love freedom, who are genuine Democrats.
This verdict is not fair. It isn't just for her. That was why she was protesting for the solution. But the court did not give the solution, but punished her and jailed her instead.
Supporters of the Pakistani Islamist party Jamaat Ulema al-Islam demonstrated in the streets calling for diplomatic and economic boycott of India over its critical remarks about Prophet Muhammad made by its ruling party spokeswoman. The protesters chanted slogans against Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, holding banners reading "Our Prophet, our honor," and "We are ready to lay down our lives for the honor of our Prophet." Indigenous groups in Ecuador blocked some highways with mounds of earth and burning tires on Monday, kicking off a protest against the economic policies of President Guillermo Lasso. Indigenous and social organizations are asking the president for 10 enterprises, including that he freezes gasoline costs at the lower price, stop additional oil and mining development, and extend deadlines for small farmers to pay off debts with banks. Miriam Zian has more to tell. Cuban government has sanctioned 381 people, including 16 young people between the ages of 16 and 18, who participated in the last summer's protests, according to the country's Attorney General's office. A total of 297 have been sentenced to between 5 and 25 years in prison. Last summer saw rare anti-government protests in the island. Thousands of Cubans marched against food, medicine and power shortages amid a spike in coronavirus cases in Cuba. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.